Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Economist warns Trinidadians and by extension Caribbean people to prepare for higher prices. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday 14th March 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Economist and former Finance Minister Mariano Brown says he expects inflation to go through the roof in response to Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley putting the public on notice that the government cannot insulate the country completely from price hikes which are currently affecting the oil industry. This revelation was made by Dr. Rowley on Tuesday during the conversation with the Prime Minister session. Nicole Romani of TV6 News reports.
According to the Prime Minister, the government would have to make a decision on how much funding it can find to subsidize gas to take some of the pressure off the population. Today, Mr. Brown says, the rising oil and gas prices will affect the standard of living for many citizens.
It means that the cost of living and the rate of inflation is going to go through the roof. And we are looking at the rates of inflation rates, which are similar to the inflation rates which were experienced when we had what is known as the world commodity cycle. And that lasted between 2003 to roughly 2014, where the prices of steel, the price of wheat, the price of flour, price of grain generally, all went up. Now you add to that issue of the immediate supply side effects that have come as a result of COVID-19. We still have sorted that out. That would take about 18 months to sort out. Excuse me. We are now at a stage where we're probably about 6 months in the cycle. So we probably have about a year to go. Now you add this as well. So it means that prices are going to go up substantially.
The Economist says taxes and water rates will have to increase as well. And the unfortunate thing is that it will happen all at once.
The point is that the current water rates as they stand are negligible. I mean, virtually we're paying nothing for the maintenance of water. So that the transfers, the fact that we're going to have to do the difference, the difficulty perhaps is that everything is coming at the same time. But we've waited too long. So that's going to happen. There's going to be a political price to pay for that. In the sense that unhappy consumers, unhappy voters. But that's the reality.
He also says the energy sector is in trouble, and that has been reflected in terms of government's attempt to befriend or stay close to Venezuela regarding gas.
Because our gas situation has been dicey. So it's not merely monetizing the cross-border gas, the gas that we share on the border, but it's also about cross-border. How do we get access to that? Now that's a difficult area, and we've been talking about this for 20 years. We've not been able to make any significant breakthroughs. So we have to presume at this stage of the game, we have to continue doing the work or continue the dialogue in terms of trying to get there. But at the same token, you have to run the country on the assumption that if that takes place, that is great. But in the meantime, I have to run the country as normal.
He says Dr. Rowley has been telling the country about the economic changes for a while, and now the time has come for action. He says, we don't know how long the Ukraine-Russia conflict would last, so government has to start making adjustments today. Nicole M. Romani, TV6 News.
There is a call in Barbados to name Prime Minister Tom Adams a national hero. More in this Barbados Today news item.
On the 37th anniversary of the death of former Prime Minister Tom Adams, there's a call to make him a national hero. Speaking at a wreath-laying ceremony at the St. Michael's Cathedral today, Barbados Labour Party stalwart and current Member of Parliament for St. Thomas, Cynthia Ford, said that the former Prime Minister should be accorded the island's top title.
And I pray that as the time goes by, yes, we are identifying national heroes. We, the folk of St. Thomas, recommend that none other than Tom Adams become one of the national heroes of this country, because he has transformed the landscape and he has done so much. As I speak on the outskirts of the central bank, now the Tom Adams Financial Center, that is just one of the wonderful things that he would have done with the advancement or the development of this country. And so today we say farewell to you again, Tom. Thank you for all that you have done for the people of Barbados. And on behalf of the Barbados Labour Party and the management there, as well as all the Labour Party family and Barbadians as a whole, we want to say how fond we are and how loving we are towards the things you have done. And we look forward to lending our support to any leader in Barbados who continues to look towards the development of this country.
Over in Jamaica, the announcement of a new $2,000 banknote is not sitting well in some quarters. CVM Television has more.
Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark, during his budget debate Tuesday, tabled a motion for a new $2,000 note to be introduced, in addition to a redesign of all the current notes. This marks the first time in 13 years that a new banknote is being put forward, and has subsequently triggered questions raised at the time of the introduction of the $5,000 bill. What does this say about Jamaica's economy?
About their economy. The $5,000 note is the largest note, and it continues to be the largest note out there. I think that if it were the case that we're introducing a $10,000 bill, then that would send a greater signal that the value of our currency, which is a representation of the strength of our economy, is getting weaker. But I think that the $2,000 bill doesn't send so much of a signal so strong.
Economist Dr. Andre Horton says it merely provides the country with more leverage between the $1,000 and the $5,000 note.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
The Jamaica Public Service Company JPS says it's worried that rising oil prices in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine will affect its customers.
In a release, JPS's Chief Financial Officer, Vernon Douglas, pointed to the increase in the prices of oil and natural gas in the last year, which is likely to rise higher, resulting in a spike in electricity costs. Now, the JPS executive explained that the company has to pay more to its fuel suppliers and added that fuel makes up about half of customers' electricity bills, so the monthly changes can be significant. The JPS says it is also concerned about the possible shortage of fuel to Jamaica. The company has started discussions with its suppliers, Petrojam and New Fortress Energy, to assess their ability to meet the country's fuel needs. The utility company says its suppliers are exploring all options to secure fuel.
Venezuela has released 2 jailed U.S. citizens following talks with a high-level U.S. delegation in Caracas. HGP's Tamika Rodney has more.
One of those freed is Gustavo Carnitas, an executive with Citgo, a U.S. refining company once controlled by Venezuela's state oil firm. The other is Jorge Alberto Fernandez, who was arrested last year in Venezuela and accused of terrorism. U.S. President Joe Biden confirmed their release and said both had been wrongfully detained in Venezuela. President Biden thanked Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs Roger Carstens and the entire diplomatic team for their tireless efforts to secure their release and reunite these families. Mr. Cardenas is one of a group of 6 jailed oil executives known as the Citgo Six. A lawyer from the Citgo Six said the remaining 5 oil executives are still detained. In November 2020, they were sentenced to lengthy prison terms ranging between 8 and 13 years. While they were temporarily moved from jail into house arrest in April 2021, they were moved back to prison in October. The move came just hours after Alex Saab, a businessman with close ties to the government of Nicolas Maduro, was extradited to the U.S. from Cape Verde. The release of the 2 men is seen by analysts as a goodwill gesture by the Venezuelan government following a rare visit to Caracas by a high-level U.S. delegation.
Tamika Rodney again tells us U.S. President informed Colombia's president that he plans to designate Colombia as a major non-NATO ally, granting the strategic status to a key country in a turbulent region as the U.S. seeks to isolate Russia.
In White House talks, Biden and President Ivan Duque said they would work toward signing a regional migration agreement at the Summit of the Americas in June in Los Angeles. Colombia is currently home to 1.9 million migrants from neighboring Venezuela. Major non-NATO ally status is a designation bestowed by the United States to close allies that have strategic working relationships with Washington but are not members of NATO. Argentina gained this status in 1998 and Brazil in 2019. Their meeting took place days after secret negotiations between senior U.S. officials and representatives of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro arranged the release of 2 American detainees. The move had raised eyebrows in Colombia, which has tense relations with Venezuela. There was no sign of tension in their public remarks. Both presidents condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Duque said Colombia was offering assistance to countries in that region on handling the mass of people evacuating the bloodbath in Ukraine.
The Bahamian cabinet, meantime, announced possible sanctions against Russia. ZNS News has more.
Imposing possible sanctions against war-raging Russia discussed extensively in cabinet today, with the government revealing that it's in consultations with its partners and stakeholders both here at home and abroad. This latest twist comes on the heels of the Bahamas being called upon to limit Russian access to Bahamian financial institutions and restrict Russian aircraft access to Bahamian airspace. As we've reported, the Bahamas joined a UN vote last week to condemn Russia. Now, while the government has yet to make any concrete decision in this regard, in a brief release from Cabinet, it advises all local entities to take the appropriate caution in their transactions with Russian individuals, as well as those entities that have been sanctioned not only by the United States, but the European Union, Canada, as well as the United Kingdom. Based on U.S. intelligence, Russian President Vladimir Putin has suggested he's likely to escalate the conflict in Ukraine without any concern for the number of civilians killed. International reports are that 291,000 Ukrainians have fled to Romania since Russia's invasion.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.